we have a fresh update on the advanced server. And this time, we have a lot of hero adjustments. Some meta picks are getting toned down, some underrated heroes are getting buffed, and Revamped Kaja is getting smoother again. The major highlights in this patch are Zhuxin, Ruby, and Revamped Kaja. But there are also important changes for heroes like Suyou, Leomord, Claude, Masha, Ling, and Aulus. So let's check it out. First up on our list is Suyou, and he received a damage nerf. The developers reduced his early to mid-game damage, especially on his skill 2. Both the tap version and hold version now deal lower base damage. This means Suyou won't burst enemies as hard during the earlier stages of the match. He can still fight, but his snowball pressure should feel a bit weaker now. So if you're using Suyou, you may need to be more careful when forcing early fights. Next is Kalia, and this one is more of a damage curve adjustment. Her early game damage was reduced, but her late game scaling is now better. Her enhanced basic attacks now start with lower base damage, but they gain extra damage based on hero level. So basically, Kalia should feel weaker in the early game, but better as the match goes longer. This is not a straight nerf or a straight buff. It's more like shifting her power away from early aggression and moving it to late game. Leomord is also getting nerfed. His early farming speed is slightly reduced because his skill 1 now deals less bonus damage to creeps. Before, it had 60% extra damage against creeps. Now, it's down to 40%. That means his jungle clears should be a bit slower, especially in the early game. And on top of that, his durability during ultimate is also reduced. The hybrid defense bonus from his ultimate is now lower in the mid to late game, so Leomord can still dive in with Barbiel, but he won't be as tanky as before when the game goes longer. Claude is next, and he gets a small mobility nerf. His skill 2 cooldown is now longer. It's not a huge change, but for Claude, even a small cooldown increase matters. Because skill 2 is what lets him reposition, poke safely, escape danger, and set up his ultimate. So with this nerf, Claude players will need to be more careful when using Battle Mirror Image. If you waste it at the wrong time, you may have a harder time escaping. Zhuxin gets a buff in this patch. Her passive now restores more mana from each Crimson Butterfly. It goes from 4% to 5%. That sounds small, but for Zhuxin, mana management is very important. This should help her stay active longer in fights and rotate more comfortably without running out of mana too quickly. So overall, it's a simple but useful buff for Zhuxin players. Ruby is also getting buffed. Her skill 1 now has higher physical attack scaling. Both the sight damage and shockwave damage received a small damage increase. This means Ruby's poking, wave clear, and trading should feel slightly stronger. It's not the type of buff that suddenly makes her one-shot enemies. But for a sustained fighter like Ruby, any extra damage on a low cooldown skill can be very useful, especially since she uses skill 1 a lot during lane trades and team fights. Odette receives a nerf to her ultimate's movement. The developer said that with the bonus from her slow and immobilize, Odette's movement speed during her ultimate became a bit too strong. So now, the slow effect of her movement speed during her ultimate is stronger. In simple terms, Odette should move slower while channeling her ultimate. This makes her easier to catch, easier to reposition against, and less annoying when she's trying to chase enemies during Swan Song. But they also optimize the timing between the two casts of her ultimate to help prevent accidental cancellation. So it's a nerf to her mobility, but with a small quality of life improvement. Masha is next, and this one is a pretty important adjustment. The developers fixed an issue where she could recover more HP than expected in certain situations. They also fixed an issue where her skill 2 could crit. Aside from the fixes, her sustain is also reduced. Her feral region is now lower, so she won't recover as much HP as before. Her extra damage was also adjusted. Instead of leaning heavily on the target's max HP, the scaling now shifts more to extra physical attack. And to make things harder for her, her skill 2 cooldown is now longer. So overall, this is a nerf to Masha's sustain lane, skill uptime, and some of her unexpected damage interactions. Revamped Kaja gets another buff, and this one focuses on making his skill 2 feel smoother to control. The cooldown is shorter, the animations is optimized, and the control experience should feel better overall. They also reduce the turn speed limit after soaring, which should help make his movement feel more manageable. Another important change is that after soaring, the cooldown now becomes shorter at higher levels. And there's also a new effect. Hitting an ally now also increases the flight duration. It doesn't give any other effect, but it does help Kaja stay in the air longer. His ultimate also received an improvement. The lasso now follows Kaja faster. So when Kaja catches someone, it should feel more responsive and less awkward. Overall, this is a very nice quality of life buff for Revamped Kaja. His control should feel smoother, and his ultimate should connect better with his movement. Aurora also gets a buff. Her skill 1 and skill 2 cooldowns are now shorter in the early to mid game. Skill 1 starts at 5 seconds instead of 6, and skill 2 starts at 10 seconds instead of 12. The late game cooldown stays the same, but this makes her early game feel much better. Aurora can poke more often, clear waves more comfortably, and look for free setups more frequently. So for Aurora users, the early game should feel less slow now. Ling is getting a useful early game buff. His basic attack speed is increased, which helps his jungle clear, and his skill 2 also gets a shorter cooldown with lower energy cost. This is a really good change for Ling because his early game depends a lot on how fast he can farm and how smoothly he can move around the map. With lower energy cost and shorter cooldown, Ling should feel more active in the early stages. He can clear faster, rotate faster, and maybe look for earlier plays. Cici gets a small but useful buff to her passive. Her stacks now disappear more slowly. Before, she lost one stack every 0.3 seconds. Now it's every 0.5 seconds. This makes it easier for Cici to maintain her passive stacks during fights. And since her passive helps her stay strong in extended combat, this buff should make her feel more consistent. It's not a flashy buff, but it helps her keep momentum once she starts fighting. Aulus is also getting adjusted. His damage composition is changed to make him more threatening against low HP targets. His enhanced basic attack no longer focuses on the target's max HP the same way as before. Instead, it now has a stronger flat damage component that scales with hero level. This should help Aulus finish off low HP enemies more reliably. And his skill 2 dash distance is also increased, so he can chase enemies better and stick to targets more easily. Overall, this helps Aulus become more dangerous when he's running enemies down. Now let's move on to the Mythical Honor Battlefield adjustment. And Sicilian gets a buff. His passive now gives more max mana increase and mana regen when his skill hits. It goes from 10 to 12. For Sicilian, this is a useful buff because his scaling depends a lot on stacking and mana growth. So in high-ranked matches, Sicilian should have a slightly better time scaling into the late game. And finally, we have an update on the hero difficulty rating. The developers re-evaluated and updated the difficulty ratings for most heroes on the official server. This is meant to make the ratings more accurate based on the current match environment. So if you check a hero's details screen, you may notice that their difficulty rating has changed. It doesn't affect gameplay directly, but it should help players understand which heroes are easier or harder to use right now. And that's it for this advanced server update. Suyou, Leomord, Claude, Odette, and Masha are getting toned down. Meanwhile, Zhuxin, Ruby, Kaja, Aurora, Ling, Cici, and Aulus are getting improvements. For me, the most interesting one here is Revamped Kaja, because his smoother skill 2 and faster ultimate follow-up could make him feel much better in actual matches. But what do you think about this patch? Which hero got the biggest change? Drop your thoughts in the comments. As always, thank you for watching.